one of the ways that new believers need to be equipped to be self-feeding is in terms of interpreting and applying Scripture. Two ways that I like to do this from the very beginning are what I call chat groups, which are often also called life transformation groups, and what's sometimes called I Am Second groups, Discovery Bible Studies, 3/3 groups, T for T groups, Models for Ministry groups, My Hope groups. There are a lot of names for them. But in those groups, that sort of functions as a Bible study for a spiritual community. So let's first take a quick look at the chat groups. The chat groups are a derivation of life transformation groups, as I mentioned. So these are groups of 2 or 3 people of the same gender that meet together weekly, and they primarily do 3 things. One is during the week they'll spend some time praying for 1 or 2 lost people that are known by each person in the group, and they pray for their salvation. Secondly, they're reading 25 to 30 chapters of Scripture a week, and they'll decide together what to read. So, for example, it might be the book of Colossians 7 times, which would give you 28 chapters. And then they're held accountable by one another for reading that. And then thirdly, the time when they're meeting together, they're discussing life accountability questions that cover a whole range of topics, and related both to the application and lessons learned from the reading and just general topics that help them track sort of their sanctification and maturing process in various areas of their life. And so those chat groups provide a broad understanding of Scripture so that people begin to understand issues like how one passage relates to another, or how context impacts the message, or the genre of Scripture, or they start to pick up clues about what it meant to the original audience, and so on. The I Am Second groups, or Discovered Bible Studies, or 3/3 groups, whatever you want to call them, these are essentially a simple church. And when they meet together, the Bible study portion of their time is focused on 3 different portions. One is looking back and answering the question for each person, how did I do in applying what the Lord spoke to me to do from last week's study, and how did I do in passing that on to someone else? So that's looking back. Then looking up, you'll read or paraphrase or quote the Scripture a couple of times in the process, at the beginning and in the middle of the look up portion. In the look up portion, you'll ask questions, and there are different flavors of this. The one that I use, you first ask, what did you like, or what particularly spoke to you from this passage? And everyone has a chance to discuss that. Secondly, what was challenging or confusing about this passage? And everyone has a chance to share. And then you'll read or paraphrase the passage again, and then ask, what did we learn about God from this, and what do we learn about people? And after we've completed that section, then we spend some time in prayer, asking the Lord to speak to us specifically how He would have us to apply this, and who He would have us pass it on to. And then, after we've taken some time to discern that, then each person goes around and shares. And then we'll take time to practice any of those that might be difficult conversations or difficult situations. And so that we have an opportunity to practice what those applications or what the sharing with others would look like. And so these are the 3 thirds: the look back, the look up, and the look forward. And so that gives people a basic understanding of how to interpret and apply Scripture. After people have been believers a while, you can sometimes add some additional questions in there to, increase the depth or make it a little more nuanced. But there is a lot of truth that can be gleaned just from these basic questions. And so with a few basic tools like these small groups and the chat groups, people can develop the basic skills they need to be able to interpret and apply Scripture so that they continue to grow in their faith.